Oh yeah, we're gonna have a huge show today. It's gonna be massive. We're gonna talk about some of the psyops that are deployed against the American people from the Trump administration, within the Trump administration, involving individuals who have carried out other psychological operations when it comes to defending, supporting, protecting Israel. So really looking forward to sharing the details of that reporting with you in just a second. Later in the show, we'll be interviewing Joe Kent, who stepped down from the Trump administration over the Iran war. He's going to talk to us about the alleged peace negotiations between the United States and Iran and whether or not there's any real hope that the US is engaging in good faith. Later in the show, we'll also talk about the Israeli national who is now tied to two, not one, but two illegal biolabs that were discovered in the US, one in Nevada, one in California. I'll give you the details as to why federal charges against him have been dropped. But luckily, he is still facing some charges. We'll get to that a little later in the show. Lots to talk about, lots to get to. I don't want to waste too much time, so I want to encourage you all to like and share the stream if you're watching us live. It's a free and easy way to help support the show and spread the message of TYT. You can also become a member, where today in our bonus episode that's members only, we're going to talk a little bit about a very surprising potential contender for the GOP ticket in 2028. We'll tell you who that individual is and why it's so surprising. So if you're a member, you can look forward to that. If you're not a member, please consider becoming one by going to tyt.com/join, or you can hit that join button if you're watching us live on YouTube, or if you're just watching us on YouTube, period. All right, with all that in mind, why don't we get to our first story? There is an explosive story involving leaked information about a pro-Israel influence operation right inside the Trump administration. Not only does this campaign seek to benefit Israel, it's also targeting Americans who speak out against the foreign country's undue influence over, our government. The story was brought to us by a former White House correspondent. Her name is Gabrielle Cuccia, who detailed a meeting between a pro-Israel organization known as Vine and Fig Tree, or VFT, and Trump's counterterrorism czar, Sebastian Gorka. Now, she claims, the reporter, in an X post that shortly after the White House meeting, I was connected through a third party and asked to script write for VFT. I was told the script would be used to create an AI-generated video on behalf of the White House, specifically for the National Security Council and Sebastian Gorka. So she described this third party, this individual who approached her, as publicly very Christian and widely perceived as America first. Further, she writes that this person told me they have to do this on behalf of them, meaning the administration, because they don't want it to look like it's actually coming from the White House. You know what I mean? I mean, it worked out for them and Nick Shirley. Okay, let's pause for a second. Worked out for the White House and Nick Shirley. So essentially, Nick Shirley, according to this individual who approached Cuccia, was a plant by the Trump administration. Basically, he was putting out reports on behalf of the Trump administration while concealing the fact that he was doing so for the Trump administration. Fascinating. Now, Cuccia was then given a Dropbox link containing research, polling data, internal comments, and VFT's strategy material. She says that their reports monitor major conservative and dissident right accounts and frequently frame those accounts as vulnerable to or participating in foreign influence operations. By the way, with no evidence. Okay, so here are some conservatives who are very critical of the US alliance to Israel or Israel's influence on the United States. Let's go ahead and put together reports accusing them of all sorts of things, including being paid by foreign actors. So the reports, she writes, include information regarding Nick Fuentes, the Hodge twins, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Jackson Hinkle, Ian Carroll, surprisingly Mario Nawfal, who I think is ridiculously naive sometimes when it comes to Israel, but anyway, they also collected polling and response data surrounding Joe Kent's resignation from the administration. So they're putting together some dossiers, some Oppo research, but the problem with the Oppo research is that they're basically putting together this false case alleging that these individuals are not just people who have their own minds and have an issue with Israel. No. These are people who might be influenced, maybe even paid by foreign actors. So the documents consider deploying Matt Walsh or Michael Knowles to publish on behalf of VFT. No evidence that they're actually doing that. It's just that they're considering it as part of their strategy. Another internal comment weighs in on how they will advise politicians based on their data, which also compiles info surrounding JD Vance's 2028 presidential run. Quote, "There is definitely a way to use this in our favor. Tell politicians that there are two wings of the Republican Party. They do not overlap. The majority lies here," the pro-Israel side, I'm assuming they mean. "And this is where you should be if you want to get reelected." Of course. If you dare speak out against Israel, you've got no shot at getting elected. So look, we also learn about the use of burner profiles, burner ad accounts, AI generated propaganda, troll content briefs, engagement testing, and more. And remember, Sebastian Gorka, according to reporting from Ken Klippenstein, which we interviewed him about, by the way, on the show just last week, they're looking to label, Sebastian Gorka specifically, is looking to label right-wing dissidents like Tucker Carlson as domestic terrorists. And he's the one who took that meeting with VFT. Now, VFT is also going after Randy Fine's political opponent, Dan Bilzerian, which Cuccia wrote about and says that they're suggesting that he's funded by Qatar. Right. And as Gen X Girl and Mel report in their Substack piece, very in-depth Substack piece, further investigating this story, they write that Vine and Fig Tree operates through two tightly linked 501c3 nonprofits incorporated in New York in 2024. The Vine and Fig Tree Institute quickly raised $3 million in its first year, almost entirely from undisclosed philanthropic donors. It then funneled $850,000 into its sister entity, the Vine and Fig Tree Fund, which acts as the grant-making arm. In just 1 year, the fund handed out major sums, including $250,000 to Combat Hate Foundation, $100,000 each to Morona Leadership Foundation and the Giving Back Fund, and additional grants to aligned groups. These are all pro-Israel groups, by the way. Both organizations, by the way, claim 0 employees, raising questions about how such large sums of money are being moved with minimal overhead to influence American discourse. Now, the plot thickens because Zach Shapira, who happens to be a former IDF commander and ex-employee, happens to be one of the central figures who's producing VFT reports on conservatives who refuse to bow to Israel. In an April 2025 VFT intelligence brief titled "Foreign Malign Influence Targeting the Trump Administration's Policy and Personnel," Shapira is directly tied to the analysis. And look, the main point of VFT's latest operation is to push the idea that anti-Israel voices are largely the result of foreign psyops that are carried out by countries like Russia, Iran, China, or Qatar. And Shapira specifically calls for our federal government to do something about it because it's impossible to even consider that anyone would have a functioning brain and think for themselves and maybe see the influence of Israel over our government as something that's detrimental for the American people, right? Look, Zach Shapira is pushing for something known as digital borders, which would ironically deploy the federal government in considering foreign influence as a national security issue. Obviously not the foreign influence of Israel, that's okay. Just the foreign influence of any other country, even though there's no evidence that that's happening. Anyway, this is all about monitoring Americans and finding ways to downrank accounts on social media that they deem merely suspicious in order to censor Americans. It's that simple. Shapira was actually booked on Emily Austin's show to discuss his quest for more censorship of anti-Israel voices on social media. Let's take a look.
On the digital borders front, on the foreign front, transparency is really a big piece of that. There's no deterrent effect. There's no material consequence for creating a bot account, getting suspended, and then trying again. So this is where I think there's room for the government to step in, because if platforms just are playing whack-a-mole constantly, they're on this treadmill, this hamster wheel of trying to constantly purge the account of bots. And the problem is only getting more sophisticated with AI. More and more increasingly, I think we have to get to the root of the problem, which is basically the actual bot farms, the operators, the financial transactions that are underpinning this, the relationships that they have with foreign states. So I don't think that the platforms are in a position to address that, and the government is.
Now, of course, this whole thing is super ironic when you consider the fact that Israel openly talks about investing hundreds of millions of dollars into social media influence campaigns here in the United States, complete with bots, complete with having wealthy billionaires like the Ellisons buy up our media, including our social media. TikTok is an example, of course. They had been eyeing X. I mean, come on. In fact, Emily Austin is an interesting choice for this interview. In fact, why don't we go on a little bit of an adventure and get to know who Emily Austin is and just how intertwined she happens to be with the Israeli government. And I want to show the receipts, the evidence, because it's one thing to throw out allegations, it's another thing to provide the receipts. So let's begin. Back in April of 2023, which of course was months before October 7th, the Jerusalem Post published an article. You're looking at it right now on the screen. It's titled, "Making Israel-US Jewry Relations Cool Again." All right, well, in the body of that article, Emily Austin is described as a social media influencer, Hasbara activist. I'm not kidding, this is a screenshot from the actual article. Hasbara activist, okay, great. But Austin is so much more than a mere propagandist for Israel on social media. In fact, there is evidence that she has worked for the Israeli government directly. Let's show the receipts on that. So Israeli outlet I-24 News reported in January 2023 that Austin had joined Israel's UN mission. Very impressive. Now, the best part about the article is what Austin actually thinks about the United Nations. She calls it an organization she considers to be anti-Semitic, but is very important to her. If it's anti-Semitic, why is it important to you? Anyway, other reporting is a little more in-depth about her role in Israel's UN mission. So why don't we take a look at that? According to a January 2023 article from the Jewish News Syndicate, JNS, titled "Sports Journalist Emily Austin Brings Her A Game in Defense of Israel," writer Bradley Martin notes the following. Austin would begin to serve as a media consultant to permanent representative of Israel to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan. Okay, so who the hell is Gilad Erdan? Well, he's an Israeli politician and a lifelong member of the Likud party. The same political party who notorious war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu belongs to? Yeah, that's the party. Well, Erdogan served as permanent representative of Israel to the United Nations between 2020 and 2024, with Emily Austin under his employ as his media consultant for at least part of his time in that role. Recently, the Times of Israel published a piece noting his current political aspirations. He told the publication that the goal is to establish a new right-wing party. I want to lead and head such a framework, and I am examining whether there is political feasibility for it. In the post-Netanyahu era, I see myself as a candidate for prime minister. I know what Israel needs. If I felt comfortable with what is happening in the Likud, I would return to political activity within the party. So I give you that information because it's important to understand she was working for an Israeli politician representing the Israeli UN mission. She was their media consultant. Emily Austin worked for that guy. So One should wonder how an allegedly 25-year-old woman who was raised in Brooklyn has so many close and cozy ties with members of the Israeli government. For example, Ynet Global's Daniel Edelson wrote in Ynet Global that amongst all the who's who's of the New York City's Jewish community who attended the World Jewish Congress held at the MoMA, the one who caught my attention was a young blonde woman who seemed to be on first name basis with all the VIPs. As a typical Israeli, I was curious to know who this woman was and how has she attained this status? Did she come from money? Perhaps she was a byproduct of Hollywood fame? No. He ultimately claimed that an acquaintance of his told him that Austin is self-made and somehow managed to have everyone in the city wrapped around her finger. Yeah, right. Somehow she's one of the top pro-Israel voices who keeps getting invited onto major media outlets like CNN or Piers Morgan, even though she's a bit of a moron. Watch.
The West Bank has a port. They can import and export. Israel gave them a great piece of land. They received billions of dollars in aid, not only from the US, but Israel gave, are you mad? They had a chance to rebuild, but they spent the last 15 plus years crying that they don't have enough land because there is never enough land for them instead of rebuilding.
Was she serious? I mean, the West Bank does not have a port. And despite its name, the Dead Sea is not an actual sea where trade with ships transiting to and fro takes place. But anyway, aside from media invites to discuss topics she knows nothing about, somehow she's always present at all these Israel-aligned events featuring a ton of politicians and political operatives. In fact, here she is with Ophir Akunis, who happens to be Israel's consul in New York on November 15th, 2024.
When I'm here with Emily Austin, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your support. You are very brave. You are with Israel, for Israel, and you are struggling for the most important thing. You know what it is? The truth.
Wow. Well, it's easy when I have people like you in New York helping me represent my voice and amplifying my voice, so thank you for your work.
Thank you so much.
Amplifying her voice. Okay, great. So here she is with Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the Iranian Shah, who Israel wanted to install as their puppet monarch in their regime change adventures in Tehran. Austin also attended Benjamin Netanyahu's influencer strategy session back in 2025, where he was heard saying this.
We talked about the woke right, and he said, I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke right, because these people, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers, but we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is followers. TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. That's very good.
Okay, did you catch that? Because it was quick, but the Prime Minister of Israel referenced the influencers in the room, including Emily Austin, as our influencers, meaning Israel's influencers. This is why so many people believe, myself included, that Austin might be paid by the Israeli government to carry out Hasbara here in the United States. Can you really blame anyone for being suspicious about that? In fact, here's an example of a post that you'll commonly see about Emily Austin on social media. This one's on X, which features a photo of the Israeli politicians, Benjamin Netanyahu, and and the influencers who attended this meeting, including Emily Austin. So the person who posted this claims that Israel is paying influencers like Emily Austin and Laura Loomer $7,000 per post. It wasn't a joke. Israel quietly paid influencers on the American right $900,000 to peddle pro-Israel talking points in 2025 and plans to increase spending to $250,000 a month or $3 million annually. Now look, the person who posted that is referencing a September 2025 FARA filing by Bridges Partners LLC, which operates under Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs via Havas Media Germany. Now the filing made light of Israel's Esther project, which ran from June through November of 2025 and activated a total of 14 to 18 pro-Israel influencers who were allegedly paid $7,000 for each pro-Israel post they made on social media. Now here's what's important. The filing never listed specific names of the influencers who were paid as part of this foreign propaganda campaign, but many, including the person who posted that allegation, suspected that Emily Austin was one of them, which is why I asked her about it on Her Take back when I was a host on that show. After that meeting, a lot of different news stories came out, including one from Responsible Statecraft arguing that Israel is paying influencers $7,000 per post. Now, the way that that's being carried out is, in my opinion, meant to kind of make it difficult to figure out where the money's coming from. Conceal the money. Now that story has led to all sorts of influencers being accused of taking $7,000 per post. I know I've seen that happen a lot with you, Emily, and you were also at that meeting with influencers. So what's the reality of the situation?
So I'll speak on behalf of myself and honestly on behalf of the government a little bit here, the Israeli government. There are a lot of Jewish advocates who are making bank off of this war. And it's not from the government, because honestly, they can't afford what we charge for public speaking. They target influencers who agree with the cause and then recruit us for meetings like what you saw with Bibi for messaging on the same, I guess, wavelength, because everyone's kind of putting all these statements out there, and Bibi was like, why don't we unify our messaging? Now, I think what it turned into was, oh, they don't even believe in the cause, they're getting paid $7,000 per post, which if I was getting $7,000 a post, with all due respect, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I'd be on vacation once a week, because the amount of posts I've done about Israel for free, I'd be a multi-millionaire if that were true, and many others too.
Okay, so she kind of denied it, but she also got caught in a lie and then immediately pivoted to defending the idea of getting paid by Israel to carry out propaganda. And by the way, don't think I missed the fact that she said, let me speak on behalf of Israel. I know, you do that all the time. Anyway, here's what happened next.
I can safely say the government's not funding any influencer. The Esther Project, never heard of it. Whatever you just said, Chava Media, never heard of it. Maybe other people are taking that money. I'm very jealous if they are. Let me know why you're getting paid and I'm not. But this is not something unique to Israel. Imagine women for Trump. We already all like Trump. Now the government's like, hey guys, we're going to pay you to say something you already believe in. I would sign up for that immediately.
With all due respect, I don't think it's completely accurate to say that influencers aren't getting paid, because let me tell you.
By the government?
Wait, they offer that money to me, and I sent you that exact email, let me pull it up. The Consulate General of Israel, okay, wrote me an email offering to pay me to go to Israel. They would pay all my expenses and also pay me, and then they offered to give me a spot for my guest. I shot that down. I declined because it didn't sit right with me. This is about a year ago, okay? So I don't think Anna was saying that they were targeting Jewish influencers. The issue is that they were targeting influencers. They are targeting influencers.
Well, yeah, I just said they do these trips to Israel. They pay for their costs and their hotels.
You're saying that the point that she's making is correct. They are targeting influencers to convey a pro-Israel message around the country because they understand.
Did they ask you to put out any messaging, or they offered you a trip?
They did, absolutely.
So look, as you can imagine, that exchange didn't help quell speculation that Austin is a paid propagandist for Israel. Look, if she's being dishonest by saying that Israel is spending no money on influencers, as you just heard her say in that clip, how do we know she isn't being dishonest about her own situation? We don't know. And I personally have a hard time believing her. But honestly, like, who could blame me? I mean, did she really do the video that you're about to see next for free?
Imagine supporting people who start wars just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You musty anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me. While you musty anti-Semites are stacking eviction notices, Jews are out here stacking up businesses.
Jews control all the industries. Maybe if you spent more time taking notes from successful people, you wouldn't have to spend your nights and weekends spreading hate from your anonymous account with an anime profile picture.
Do you work as hard as Jews? Do you network like Jews? No, because you're too busy cheering on a group of musty terrorists who smell like dirty earring backs. And if we're gonna keep it real, you're really mad because your income is giving side hustle.
Period.
How you gonna hate from outside, Shabbat? You can't even get in.
You guys did that for free? You did that for free. Okay. Frankly, I personally don't think it matters if she's paid or not. There are clear examples of her coordinating with the Israeli government to carry out their propaganda here in America. That's the issue. And it's especially a problem when she's so close to the White House. I wonder how that happened. So here she is, pictured with the president and UFC owner Dana White in April. Oh, we ain't done yet. She was also pictured at Trump's inauguration. Seems to go to a lot of Trump events. Here she is with US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, because of course she is. And remember when former Attorney General Pam Bondi pulled that stunt where she got a bunch of conservative influencers together to supposedly hand them the Epstein files, making good on the Trump administration's promise for transparency. But then it turned out that all the documents in the binders were heavily redacted and were already in the public record. Yeah, Emily Austin was part of that humiliating mess.
I saw y'all on the internet coming for Cattell saying he's day 5 and we haven't gotten the Epstein files. Well, I'm here outside the West Wing and look at what we got today. The Epstein files, baby. Let's make America safe again.
Wow, well, how was she chosen along with Laura Loomer to be one of the people attempting to dupe Trump voters who were promised the Epstein files? Who knows? What we do know, though, is that Emily Austin is represented by one of Epstein's closest friends, Casey Wasserman. So here's Emily's speaker page for Wasserman speakers. Now here, let me zoom in for you guys so you can get a better look at what I'm talking about. Wasserman speakers right there at the top. And then Emily Austin is one of the people represented by this agency. And if there's any question about Wasserman's ties to Epstein, here's Wasserman pictured with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. It says LA 28 chairperson, Casey Wasserman, because he's the chairperson for the Olympics in 2028. Now, Emily deleted any reference to her Wasserman representation from her X bio following Bindergate, especially as people kept pointing to the fact that Wasserman was close to Epstein. So he's also, by the way, a huge donor to Israel. Here's an example of what I'm talking about here. So there you go. Wasserman's CEO, Casey Wasserman, donated $525,000 to Friends of the IDF, $25,000 to Israeli right-wing organization Stand With Us, $1 million to AIPAC campaigns. So when you really consider the tangled web Israel weaves in the United States, and you get a sense that a small group of people are well coordinated, working together to ensure that our government is working for them and not for us, it does really feel super ironic that you have Vine and Fig Tree pointing to undue foreign influence carried out by other countries and how they're supposedly in the heads of all these conservative content creators and influencers who have critical things to say about Israel. If we're gonna have a conversation about foreign influence, you can't tell me that an organization that's working on behalf of Israel's interests should be the ones rooting out foreign influence here in the United States. Anyone who dares to speak out against Israel's undue influence over our government must be destroyed, according to Fig and Vine Tree, Vine Fig Tree, whatever. But that's exactly what Vine and Fig Tree is up to in an effort to destroy Joe Kent, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Mario Nawfal, and others. I don't care what you think about these people politically. You should be against these types of campaigns against American citizens who are simply practicing their political speech, political expression in criticizing a foreign country. Because if they're coming for them, what, you think they're not gonna come for you if you're on the left? And the left is far more critical of Israel than most people on the right are. This is not okay. These types of campaigns are not okay. And it's sick to see this coordination happening between Shapira and Austin, when in reality, Austin, we have a mountain of evidence tying Austin to coordinating with the Israeli government in order to propagandize the American people. You got a problem with foreign influence, how about you take a look at your own house? But they're not gonna do that, of course. So, there you have it, that's the story. Highly recommend you guys follow Gen X Girl Files on Substack. That's the in-depth reporting I was referencing in the piece. So check that out. And then check out Kuchia's thread on X where she gets into the specific documents. She provides the receipts, provides the documents, and you can take a better look at what these organizations are really up to behind the scenes and how they're trying to work alongside the Trump administration in targeting individuals, conservative individuals who are critical of Israel. It's insane. All right, we gotta take a break. When we come back, Joe Kent joins us for an enlightening interview on current negotiations between the United States and Iran.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. You know, they'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, you know, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it. Welcome back to the Young Turks. I'm Anna Kasparian, and there is a lot of confusion in regard to where we currently stand in the negotiations between the United States and Iran. Many Americans want an end to this war. They want the Strait of Hormuz to be open. And a lot of people got their hopes up over this past weekend where it appeared as though Trump was close to making a deal with the Iranians, and then everything fell apart. So what is actually happening right now? Well, fortunately, here to discuss this story with us is Joe Kent, the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center. He stepped down from the Trump administration following the start or the launch of the war against Iran, and he's here to answer some questions today. Joe, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
You and I haven't spoken directly yet, but I really appreciate your accessibility, how many interviews you've been doing since stepping down from your role, because it has been enlightening. A lot of people are curious about what's really happening behind the scenes with the Trump administration. So why don't we start off with a question that's been, front of mind since this past weekend. So these negotiations, alleged negotiations between the United States and Iran seem to have kind of fallen apart. Some believe that the Israelis sabotaged peace yet again, but I actually question whether the Trump administration is negotiating in good faith. And the reason why I say that is because Axios, Barak Ravid specifically, keeps reporting again and again and again that Trump and Netanyahu are just at each other's throats. They had a tense phone call and there's a big disagreement. And then you turn over to Israeli media, and Channel 14 News had quoted Kobe Michael, a senior researcher at the Misgave Institute, who told the Israeli press this: by leaking the story about an alleged serious crisis between Netanyahu and Trump, the Iranians may find themselves completely surprised by the timing of the next military strike. The leak, meaning the leak to Barak Ravid, created a sense of disagreement between the two leaders and positioned Trump as the leader, giving diplomacy another chance. Despite heavy pressure from Netanyahu, Trump understands very well who the Iranians are. So basically, he's making the argument that it was all meant to trick everybody, including the Iranians, as the US prepared to do a surprise strike on Iran yet again, which they did carry out near the Strait of Hormuz, killing 4 Iranian soldiers. So what do you make of all of this? What's actually going on here?
Well, it's definitely kind of a chaotic situation. The fundamentals, though, haven't changed. I mean, the Iranians are in control of the Straits of Hormuz. They've demonstrated that. They obviously, because it's their backyard, they can outlast us. We continue to say that we want diplomacy while baking in poison pills to the negotiating demands, saying that the Iranians have to give up enrichment, which we know basically kills any hope of the deal with the Iranians. We know that until we actually restrain the Israelis, whether we admit it or not, that the Israelis will do everything they can to make sure the negotiations aren't successful. And the Israelis have been very upfront with us basically from the beginning. I mean, they want to take down the regime. They don't care how long it takes. So the fundamentals with the Israelis haven't changed at all. If anything, they know that their time is limited, especially as we head in towards the midterms. So unless we actually start taking away some of the military support that we give them that enables them to go on the offense, I mean, we just have to be realistic and know that Israel is going to operate on, in accordance with their own best interests. So I kind of think a lot of what we're seeing, unfortunately, is theater. And I say that, and I do hope that everything that President Trump says about trying to get a deal, I hope that's true, and I hope he proves us wrong, and I hope he actually does get a deal. But I think right now the Iranians are seeing that they still control the big fundamentals, and they're leaving Trump with the only option right now he has, unless he decides to leave, like I've been advocating for, is to escalate militarily. A lot of the hardliners in Iran, I think, want that. The Israelis want that, but Trump hasn't so far, because I think deep down inside, President Trump knows that actually there is no military solution. He tried that for the first iteration of the war, and it didn't work. So until President Trump kind of snaps out of it and sees that, basically he's being given really bad advice by probably some of his own advisors and by the Israelis, and just leaves, we're going to be stuck in this stalemate, which I think is very dangerous, because, we're one missile or we're one strike away from losing some of our troops. And then we're going to be in an escalation cycle once again where we can't leave under fire. Right now, I think he should take the opportunity while there is a ceasefire to just declare victory and simply leave, reset the negotiation that way.
Okay, you just said so many interesting things that I want to ask you about. Okay, so I totally agree with your assessment in regard to Trump should just leave. There is no winning this war. But you said that, Iran would want an escalation. Why do you believe that?
Because right now, militarily, they're winning. So two things. Number one, because we killed a lot of the moderates in that country. And I know a lot of, our critics will get mad when I say the former Ayatollah was some kind of a moderate. I don't mean moderate in the sense of like one of our neighbors moderate here in America. I mean moderate by Iranian standards. Mm-hmm. He was making the Iranians observe a strict escalation ladder in regards to their proxies attacking us. He held the prohibition on the development of a nuclear weapon. We killed him really early on. The Israelis were diabolically smart in getting us on board with doing that strike because they basically got us on board of taking out the moderates. Several of the other moderates were killed. So now the IRGC and a lot of the hardliners who've been advocating for more aggression against us and the Israelis for quite some time, they're now in power and they're saying like, hey, are we going to sit, and play this negotiating game with the Americans and wait for them to attack us for the third time during negotiations? Let's hit them. Also, the Iranian regime, they were having some internal strife before the conflict kicked off in February. However, since we killed the Ayatollah and hit Iran, they've had a rally around the flag effect with their people. So the hardliners in Iran, just like the hardliners in Israel, and unfortunately, just like the hardliners here in our country, they all want the war to resume because it benefits them. So I think that's what we have to be wary of right now. That's why I say Trump should get us out right now, because one of those hardliners could simply decide to restart the war and, God forbid, kill some of our troops, and then we can't leave under fire. While he can say that we're winning, he should leave right now.
So, it's interesting because right now, the United States and particularly Donald Trump and the Republican Party are getting nothing beneficial out of this war. Nothing. I mean, the Strait of Hormuz is closed right now. The economy is already roiling as a result of that. It's only going to get worse the longer the strait is closed. So Trump seems to have every incentive to walk away. And he's one of these rare people who's able to, say that he won, right? Like declare victory even in the face of defeat, and people will believe it. So I think he could totally pull that off and just end this, but he's not doing that. So the real question is, why? Is it because, look, some people genuinely think, oh, well, the Israelis have something on him. Maybe it's blackmail. Others argue that he's worried about being assassinated by the Israelis. Those are some of the more hyperbolic allegations. But other allegations might have to do with, something that we're unaware of, right? Like maybe Trump genuinely thinks he could get a deal. But what is your read of it? Why do you think Trump is allowing the Israelis to essentially dictate the terms of this war, how long it lasts, and whether or not it ends?
You're right, and that's the question. I mean, because right now for President Trump to stay in the situation that he knows is bad, that he's not benefiting from, America's not benefiting from, smart money would say that he would just pull out and, like you said and I said, just kind of project that he had won. So the question is, why is he doing this? And my best guess is it is a combination of there is an unknown factor there, and I will be accused of being called a conspiracy theorist, but saying that, hey, we should at least look at the assassination attempts against President Trump, the breaches in his security, what happened of Charlie Kirk. We should factor those things in. I'm not saying that's 100% the case, but maybe there also is something else that's unknown that I'm not sure of. Or really the Israelis did a very, very good job of profiling American politics and profiling President Trump's psychology, and they still have this echo chamber around him that I described in my resignation letter, where you have higher level Israeli officials that are engaging directly outside of official channels with American officials that are in Trump's inner circle. You've got the media echo chamber that he consumes of Fox News, the New York Post, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, et cetera. You've got the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, the pro-Israel think tank that's staffing a lot of his national security decisions that are saying, no, Mr. President, you can't leave. They're playing to his ego and saying that you're historic. You're the only one that can take down this regime that's been in power for the last 47 years. I understand that, and I think that makes sense to a certain degree. However, I do think President Trump is smart enough to see that he's, again, not getting anything out of this. So I'm kind of left going back to our original question of, what the hell is he doing? Because I do believe that this is actually out of characteristic for President Trump.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that look, I don't think you're being a conspiracy theorist. I think that there's something bigger here that the general public is totally unaware of, and that's what's keeping him in this war. Look, the other thing that really stood out to me today in the press conference that he held was a statement that he made about Oman, which we have absolutely no problem with whatsoever. But Oman has been working with Iran in trying to figure out how to manage the Strait of Hormuz. And so here's what Trump had to say in response to a question about the strait, and then he issues a threat toward Oman. Take a look.
Iran wants control of the Strait of Hormuz. Would you accept a short-term deal that allows Iran and Oman to control the strait? And would they have to open it immediately, or would you be open to that happening over a period of time?
No, the strait's going to be open to everybody.
And who would control it?
International waters. Nobody's going to control it. We're going to watch over it. We'll watch over it, but nobody's going to control it. That's part of the negotiation that we have. They would like to control it. Nobody's going to control it. It's international waters, and Oman will behave just like everybody else, so we'll have to blow them up.
Okay, I'm not an expert on military, anything related to the military. So I want to just put that on the table and let everyone know I'm ignorant of this. But that statement, first of all, the threat toward Oman, I personally think is totally unhinged. But also the statement overall, I find to be a little bit unhinged, because it's one thing to make a claim like that when you have the military capability to force open the Strait of Hormuz. But my read of this is that we do not have the military capacity to do that. Maybe I'm incorrect. Can you give us some, clarity on it?
If there was a military solution, President Trump would say to Secretary Hegseth, make it so, and it would be done. Although I think President Trump understands that any tactical victory we have would be very short-lived. Otherwise, again, he would just execute it. Look, the Iranians don't need much in terms of technology to be able to really hamper the commerce on the Straits of Hormuz. We've known this now for decades. So when President Trump, I had to go back and listen to that clip several times because I didn't know if he misspoke, and clearly he didn't. This kind of actually goes back to what we were just talking about. When I hear President Trump speak like that, I think it's very much out of character. Trump can be hyperbolic, but usually it's kind of in a jokey, over-the-top, kind of trolly way. When it comes to diplomacy and high-level negotiations, I haven't heard him talk like this with a partner country or a friendly country, even a country that he respects. I know he respects the Omanis. I've never heard that before. I've heard him be very, very measured before. I've heard him even chastise aides before for using harsh language with a potential trade partner. So I kind of read that as Trump being very frustrated. He's frustrated with a lot of the people who are noticing that he's out of really good options and who are saying the things that we're saying, like, Mr. President, why don't you just leave? And for some reason, he can't leave. And now he's lashing out at many people who used to support him, myself included. I understand why he lashed out at me because of the way I left the administration. So I understand that. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massie, there's all these folks, Tucker Carlson, there's all these people who were core Trump supporters now who are saying, Mr. President, what the hell are you doing? And he's lashed out at them. Maybe the Omanis have said something to him behind closed doors. They more than likely have, because the Omanis for a very long time, they've been like the Switzerland, the Geneva almost of the Middle East. And they've helped us out a lot with back channel diplomacy. So when he says that, I don't think it's necessary. It does come across as being very unhinged, but I think he's just frustrated with the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I would be frustrated with the situation as well, but I would maybe avoid sidelining DNI Gabbard, who has stepped down from her position when she did the threat assessment and said that Iran is not building nuclear weapons, is not a threat to the United States. And I would have maybe considered that Israel does have completely different objectives than the United States. And back to your point about how the US demands absolutely no uranium enrichment by the Iranians. I mean, every country has the right to enrich uranium up to like 3.5% for energy purposes, and apparently there are medical purposes as well. You need enriched uranium to reach 90% in order to build a nuclear weapon. And I'm not saying this just to insult Trump, because I'm genuinely curious. Do you think that he knows that? And do you think there's maybe a possibility that Trump would, if someone spoke to him about this, do you think that he would maybe accept Iran being able to enrich uranium up to 3.5%?
I don't think President Trump, at the beginning of the administration, he didn't really care about the enrichment per se. I don't think he was a technical expert on levels of enrichment. He was dead set, and he says this all the time: Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And the reason why Trump was at the negotiating table with the Iranians on 2 separate occasions, and I believe on the cusp of getting a deal, was because President Trump said Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and the Ayatollah said, "Well, good news. I've had a fatwa, a prohibition on developing a nuclear weapon that's been in place since 2003. And President Trump asked us early on in the administration, why doesn't Iran have a nuclear weapon? And we pointed out the fatwa, and we said, hey, a lot of people won't trust a fatwa because it's like this, Shia religious decree, and we have no reason to trust it other than the fact that it's actually worked. And Iran could have had a nuclear weapon long before President Trump was even in his first administration if they wanted to, but their strategy was really pragmatic. They didn't want to get the Gaddafi treatment by giving up everything, giving up the ability to enrich uranium. They didn't want to get the Saddam treatment by like rushing towards a nuclear weapon or making it look like, kind of hinting that they had a nuclear weapon. So they kind of had this middle version where they could have a nuclear weapon, but they weren't going to, and enriching uranium was a key part of that. That was well understood, and I believe President Trump understood it. If you even go back to some of the original messaging that Steve Witkoff was using when he would do media appearances, he was talking about him and the Iranians sitting down and negotiating, levels of enrichment, how the enrichment would be monitored by the international community. They were working out the technical details, and this is why I believe the Israelis came in with their influence operation in a full court press to move the red line away from Iran can never have a nuclear weapon to Iran can't enrich. The way they were able to launder that talking point into becoming U.S. policy backed us into this corner. And every time you see Trump come out and say Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, it's always cleaned up later on about enrichment. And then they push him and he's painted back into this corner. So I think if we could just get the enrichment issue, out of the way, we would move on past that and we'd be much closer to actually making a deal.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that. Great point about the cleaning up his language after the fact to no enriched uranium. And when you go to the Iranian side and what they're demanding, they have some demands that might be huge red lines for the United States. Like for instance, Iran wants all US military out of the region. And they did destroy our bases in Gulf countries. And so is that something that you think the Trump administration would be open to?
I think the gut reaction is to say, we'll never back down. We're going to keep our bases here, gosh darn it. But a lot of us have been advocating for a very long time that our bases in these regions, they're actually more of a strategic liability than they are an asset. And this last iteration of conflict with Iran really proved that. Our bases, we had to evacuate. We had to have our guys go and scatter out to local hotels. We took major damage at CENTCOM headquarters. We're always going to need some degree of, we call it, basing and overflight and, the ability to use some airfields, the ability to use ports. We're always going to need that. But the ability to have a large military presence on Iran's borders, I believe actually plays to our enemy, plays to Iran's strengths. Because if they can reach out and touch us with their weapon systems, then it's game on. It's a fair fight for them. We have the ability, and we proved this with Midnight Hammer, we have the ability to reach all the way across the world and strike our enemies if we want to, and then pull our troops back away from their striking distance. So I think this is like the easiest one for Trump to give to the Iranians. Say, okay, fine. We'll pull the vast majority of our basing out of the region. We'll occasionally use some places here and there for overflight. Fine, we'll give you that one. And then Trump can turn to the American people and say, yeah, these bases were dumb anyways, just like he's doing with a lot of the basing in Europe. He can be like, this is an old construct. We're getting ripped off on the whole deal. We're going to bring our guys back home. It's like win-win for both sides. So I think that's an easy one that we can just move on past, give the Iranians a quick win. We take a quick win. It's tactically good business for us as well.
I agree with you. Final question, and this is a little bit of a maybe controversial, tricky one. So, a few weeks back, there was an alleged rescue operation on Iranian soil by the US military. We lost several military aircraft in that mission. I don't think we're getting the whole story there. I want to know why we were so far in Iranian territory. Was there an effort to retrieve enriched uranium? Is that what was going on there?
I was out of the government by then, so honestly, I don't know. the good news that came out of that, number one, is that none of our guys were killed and we got them all out. But number two, whether that was a botched operation or that was actually legitimately a recovery operation, we did get a taste of how hard it is to operate in Iran. Iran's a big country. Projecting power into Iran is actually very, very challenging. And I'm glad that we got everybody out without anyone getting hurt. And that gave President Trump a taste of how challenging boots on the ground operations would be. Because prior to that, we were seeing a full court press by Lindsey Graham, Sean Hannity, FDD, all of them were yelling about, going boots on the ground, taking one of the islands, actually putting forces in there to support some of the so-called resistance fighters. Ever since that happened, a lot of those cries have died down. And I think the president saw how close he was to becoming like Jimmy Carter and having a Desert One type of scenario when we went in back in '79 and tried to recover our hostages and we had that catastrophic accident. So I don't have any inside information. I don't know. I'm just really glad that everyone got out okay and we kind of got our fill of it, hopefully got our fill of attempting boots on the ground operations.
Yeah, I mean, if that was an enlightening experience for the president and that would prevent boots on the ground, then I'm all for it, because I think it would be disastrous, especially when you consider what the number of troops that went into Iraq in that preemptive war. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of troops. We have 50,000 military personnel and about, I don't know how many of them are combat veterans or combat troops, but not all 50,000 of them are. And so you compare the terrain or the size of Iran versus Iraq. I mean, it's night and day. It's a far more challenging war. Putting boots on the ground, it's like a death sentence for our soldiers. And I really, really want to prevent that from happening. But I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today and give us a little bit of knowledge on what's going on. And I hope you'll come back soon. Thank you so much.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we've got more news for you. Don't miss it. Today is flying by, man. Totally flying by. Anyway, thank you for writing into all our members and super chatters. I'll try to get through as many of these as I can. I'll read some more of your comments when we get back from the break. We've got Embedded Dude in our members section who says, I wonder how much of our treasury is funneled into Israel-affiliated organizations. They need a lot to grease all the influential people in the country. I have no idea, but I wish this was something that our well-resourced legacy journalists wanted to look into, but they don't look into it, which is interesting. Cabbage writes it and says, Israel's propaganda arm is bigger than IDF and better funded thanks to the United States. Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about the fungibility of money, so when we're sending billions of dollars to Israel every year, well, that frees up their own resources to spend on whatever they want, including propagandizing Americans. So it is an issue. Let's go to Blee, South Dakota. Hello, everyone. It's hump day, almost to Friday. Hump day, I wouldn't say is my favorite day, although, Alyssa, I will be having a beer after work today, okay? Friday night is when it starts. I mean, sorry, Wednesday night is when it starts. Let's go to Bert's Plurt, who says, can Anna just challenge this weird lady to a sanctioned cage match? Welcome back, everyone. I'm a little bit late. I'm running late. So I'm gonna do a very brief segment where I read some of our member comments and super chats, and then we'll take our next break, come back, and I've got an incredible story for you about Democrats who are upset at the attacks against AIPAC. I'm not kidding. Anyway, but I want to finish reading a comment from our member, Bert's Plurt. Really love the handle. Can Anna just challenge this lady, I think you're referring to Emily Austin, to a sanctioned cage match, beat the living snot out of her, and be done with all this bull dookie? We avoid solutions to problems, tut, tut, tut. I do not agree with physical violence unless I need to do it to defend myself. And in this case, it wouldn't be defending myself. So no, there will be no cage match. And I think what's more effective is speech and making your argument, making your case, and showing your receipts, which I think I did a pretty good job with today. JJ Esper 82 says, here late today, Anna, I know you love dad jokes, so I'll post this one again so you can share in the joy and share it with your husband if you read it. Why can't you hear, I don't even know how to say that. Pterodactyls. Why can't you hear pterodactyls go to the bathroom? Because the P is silent. Christian would love that. Christian would definitely love that. All right, let's go to some more of our comments here. These are our super chats. The Transcendental Man says Netanyahu has been dead since March 9th, period. From your lips to God's ears, but I don't think that's true. I'm kidding, I don't wish death upon anybody. YTP Renewed says, is Kaya named for the Ghost Stories character? Kaya, I believe, is Hassan Piker's dog. I have no idea. Let's go to Socrates Philosophy. We are all tired of spelling the blood of little girls or spilling the blood of little girls. Please end this madness, remove the insanity, remove Lindsey Graham. I really do wish. Let's go to one more comment, again from the Transcendental Man, who says, this is why Trump is flailing ever since early March, because the master planner Bibi is dead. Everything has been AI deepfakes and body doubles. I don't think that's true. I wish it were, but I don't think it's true. Anyway, that does it for this very brief segment. We're gonna take another break. We're gonna come back, and then I'm gonna tell you about how Governor Shapiro should not be trusted at all. Okay, we'll be right back.
Indisputable is still the fastest growing news show in America compared to CNN, Fox News, and 30 other networks. We tell the truth on Indisputable because the truth is indisputable. We go places that other news media outlets refuse to go. When there were human rights abuses happening at the Victorville prison, guards and members of the community contacted us.
You, through your investigative reporting, unearthed very troubling allegations about specific forms of abuse and discrimination in the federal prison system.
It really doesn't take much to be a trusted voice. All it takes is to be fearless, report on matters, be an advocate. I called it the bullpen intentionally because it's a place of preparation. We present individuals who may have an opposing view, so we debate. Sometimes we interview individuals because their stories deserve to be heard. A survivor of significant police misconduct and his attorney. We covered this story earlier and to remind you of the horror of one man being shot at damn near 100 times by the police. We take time on this show to showcase the temper tantrums of Karens in the wild. We do this not because we want to see people's emotional outbursts in public, but because these incidents are emblematic of a bigger societal issue taking place across the nation, and it has to be checked.
My friend, my big homie, attorney at law, Benjamin Crump.
I just want to thank you, man. Educated, articulate brothers like yourself speak truth to power. It makes a great difference in changing the landscape in America. So
listen, no matter what you do, don't allow the politics of ideology to evaporate the soul that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform, so I won't stop. You won't stop either.
I'm wearing one of our pieces of merchandise. So the funny thing about the Dragon Squad, and that's what our viewers call themselves. That's the name of the group, but every individual chooses their own name. You might have Cincinnati Dragon. You might have Harry Potter dragon. We have a Grandma Sunshine dragon is one of those that I remember. These are people that like to have an element of themselves, their lives, what's significant to them reflected as a part of the community. But the concept of the Dragon Squad is just something I threw away as a joke. I was mocking the Proud Boys, these like right-wing groups that come up with a name for themselves that they think is cool, but it's actually really lame. And I thought, off the top of my head, I can come up with something that's still kind of lame, but much cooler. And so I threw out Dragon Squad, and I just moved on with my life. But everybody liked it, and so they kept it going, and so we've embraced it. And I think again, this was during the period of the pandemic. I think it was sort of nice to have a renewed sense of community, a feeling that you're a part of something when everything seems so chaotic. And as a result of that, we've got independent artists online streaming, making beautiful digital art of dragons. We've got, we've released a number of pieces of merchandise that people love sending us photos of them. And then, by the way, for me personally, people send me, like you can probably see in the background, like a knitted dragon someone sent me. There's a dragon book they sent me, dragon board games they send me. People have done like custom ironworks, making dragon bottle openers. Like the fans are super invested in diamond art and things like that. And so it's great that they send this stuff. Sometime we're gonna have to set up a wall of all of it. But yeah, it's definitely brought the community a lot closer together. The fact that we were no longer in this big studio, I felt a lot more personally attached to people. It felt very immediate. And I know that I personally needed the connection.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Anna Kasparian, and I want to tell you a little bit about how Democrats in positions of power are handling some of the backlash that's been basically launched against the Israel lobby, AIPAC being one of the major components of the Israel lobby here in the United States. Now, while it might be run by Americans, it might even be completely funded by Americans, the whole point of the Israel lobby, and AIPAC in particular, is to lobby our politicians on behalf of the best interests for Israel, not the United States, not the American people, a foreign country. And so let's talk a little bit about what we are now learning about what Democrats have to say about it. And I want to be clear, we're not talking about all Democrats, but some. So let's get into it. A bipartisan panel of CNN commentators banded together to basically defend the Israel lobby, and in particular AIPAC spending, with one panelist even admitting to running ads against Thomas Massie, who of course lost his primary to a highly funded pro-Israel puppet. Yeah, I said that, Ed Galrein. Now the panel kicked off by discussing a Democrat, Maureen Galindo, who ran for a House seat in Texas. And she happened to ignite quite a bit of a firestorm and controversy when she wrote the following, referring to herself in the third person. She'll turn Karnes ICE detention center into a prison for American Zionists and former ICE officers for human trafficking. It will also be a castration processing center for pedophiles, which will probably be most of the Zionists. As you can imagine, that was met with a lot of backlash. Okay, and so Galindo has made other controversial statements as well. She, for instance, told the San Antonio Current, quote, "It's all very complex, but it's my perception that Zionist billionaires run the world. They're of all religions, but especially Israeli, Jewish billionaire Zionists who disproportionately and factually own a lot of Hollywood production studios, media companies, and banks." And there is more. She also wrote the following. On social media, she wrote, "Zios equal genocidal European colonizer freaks." She has elsewhere referred to the synagogue of Satan and said that Israeli leaders are not real Jews. So I give you that context to finally bring us to that CNN panel that I referenced earlier. So let's watch how the conversation kicked off. In fact, let's start with Audie Cornish, who used to be over at NPR, now she's over at CNN, basically conflating Galindo's remarks with Thomas Massie's concession speech.
Now, Galindo denies that her remarks are anti-Semitic. According to the New York Times, Democrats claim Galindo is being supported by a new Republican-connected PAC called Lead Left, which has poured nearly $500,000 into the race this month. Now, talk of Israel also took center stage in the Kentucky Republican primary between Thomas Massie and Ed Galbraith. Massie eventually lost to his Trump-endorsed opponent, but it was a loss he partially blamed on the influence of pro-Israel lobbyists who dumped money into the race.
I would have come out sooner, but I had to call my opponent and concede, and it took a while to find Ed Galbraith in Tel Aviv.
All right, the group chat is back. I wanted to talk about this because once you see it surfacing bipartisan.
Interesting collection of people on that panel. We're gonna conflate what Massie said there with the statements that I read to you earlier. Are we serious? Okay, so Ed Galbraith was heavily funded by the Israel lobby. And the only reason why he was heavily funded by the Israel lobby, to the point where that GOP primary race out of freaking Kentucky for a House seat happened to be the most expensive primary race in American history. Like, why do you think the Israel lobby funded Ed Galbraith so heavily in order to defeat Thomas Massie? Well, because Thomas Massie has a problem with funding Israel's wars, having blood on our hands for being complicit in Israel's atrocities in the Middle East. Like, he has spoken out against this. He is a deficit hawk, and it turns out that he's not just a pretend deficit hawk. He actually cares about the fact that the US is drowning in federal debt. He has explained his positions over and over and over again. And so, yeah, when he mentions that Ed Galbraith is a puppet of the Israeli government because the Israeli lobby propped him up to beat Massie, I have no problem with that. To conflate what Massie said there with Maureen Galindo's statements, I think is a bit much. Let me just leave it there. Now, in the next clip, a panelist by the name of Joel Rubin accuses Massie of trying to attack Jews for political power. Let's just watch what he has to say, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
What Galindo is pushing is deeply anti-Semitic and hateful. And what Massie did right there, he might as well have just said, why didn't I call up my opponent at synagogue and just be very direct about how Jews bought the election against him. This is across the board on both extremes of both parties. The idea that Jews should now be attacked politically to gain power for candidates is becoming mainstream. It's deeply troubling as an American and as an American Jew. I find it to be anti-American and anti-Jewish. I think that the Republicans last week, they kicked out Massie in that primary. Good, now Democrats, we have a test of our own with Galindo.
You know what I find anti-American? When a foreign country gets to meddle in our elections and decide who represents the people of this country, which is effectively what happens with the Israel lobby, which is well funded, and they will destroy any incumbent who dare, speak out against Israel's actions or the US alliance with Israel, or more importantly, a politician who decides, no, I actually do not want to greenlight more funding to a genocidal regime in the Middle East. So I don't care that you're Jewish, no one mentioned Jews. No one's having a conversation about Jews. We're having a conversation about a foreign country that insists on referring to itself as the Jewish state and insists on conflating the global Jewish population with a genocidal regime in Israel. But smart people don't do that because they don't conflate an entire population of human beings with a single genocidal government that acts with impunity thanks to our government being corrupted by them. I'm just so sick of this. I'm so sick of oh my God, we are such special victims. We're the most powerful people in the country, but we're victims. You're not victims. You're not victims. Don't talk to me about what you find un-American, okay? As American taxpayers are forced to go deeper and deeper and deeper into federal debt in order to fund atrocities that Israel wants to carry out in their border expansion project in the Middle East. Anyway, Rubin, the guy you just heard from, served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Obama administration. Of course he did. So we should also note that Galindo did in fact lose her primary last night. So, doing these comparisons of Galindo and Massie, it's just, what a ridiculous conversation. But her comments were widely criticized by conservatives, liberals, progressives. Everybody criticized her comments, everybody. Okay, in this country that's like dripping with anti-Semitism and oh my God, Jewish people are the biggest victims in the world. Every single political faction in this country condemned her. But we're still having conversations about it as if we have a real big problem because one candidate said things that made people offended, that offended people. So that aside, let's actually watch more from this panel because it was enlightening. It's enlightening because we're not talking about a panel full of right-wing, Israel firsters. This is a panel of Democrats, right? The person we just heard from worked for the Obama administration. So here's a stunning moment in which the panelists actually admit that pro-Israel spending is out of control. It's going through the roof. Let's take a look.
It's something I've reported on, and it is there's millions of dollars that are coming in on this. But there are some millions of dollars that are with Latino-backed PACs or
also
Black
crypto and AI,
crypto and all that. But the association that happens here over this over Jewish money and how it connects to all this is very clearly coming across.
The PAC money we're talking about, by the way, and I've done work with AIPAC before. The PAC money is from regular American citizens, and some are Jewish, some are Christian, and believe in the U.S.-Israel relations.
I think there's some debate when it comes to PAC money because we don't always know what is happening with PAC money. But I even brought up Massie earlier because there was also a Republican Jewish coalition that spent money there.
From individuals. They collect their money from individual American citizens. I mean,
but why shouldn't they, right? Like, why shouldn't they oppose candidates who oppose their agenda? Why? And look, I've never been an AIPAC backer. I'll say when I've engaged in politics, I've stayed out of that lane. But I'm very offended as a Jewish American to see AIPAC attacked because they are supporting or opposing a candidate.
I do have a problem with the AIPAC money. Now, let me be clear. I have a problem with all of the money in politics. I have a problem with the pharmaceutical industry buying our politicians. I have a problem with the oil and gas industry buying our politicians. But there's an extra level of ickiness when foreign countries get to influence our foreign policy to the point where we fund Israel's wars. We give them the highest amount of foreign aid compared to any other country, relative to any other country that gets foreign aid from the United States. They start wars or engage in wars. We bankroll it. I don't know why. Why do we bankroll it? But we do it every time. We have spent $30 billion on Israel, by the way, on top of the usual $4 billion we give them every year in order to fund their war since October 7th, 2023. So yeah, I have a huge problem with it because here's the thing. Even if, let's say there's a full-blown investigation into who funds the Israel lobby and we find out every single person is a US citizen. I'm sure there's a lot of dual citizens in there as well. I don't care. I don't care because at the end of the day, these are individuals who are bribing our politicians, buying our politicians to do what's right for Israel, not the United States. And I know this is shocking and hard for some people to hear, okay? So brace yourselves. Sometimes, in fact, a lot of the time, Israel's interests are not the same as America's interests. Isn't that crazy? So yeah, I have a huge problem when, whether they're American citizens who care more about Israel and doing what's best for Israel, when they buy our politicians and our politicians carry out policies, foreign policy in particular, at the detriment of the American people. I have a problem with that, right? It undermines our democratic process. And on top of that, it does so in a way that carries out policies that are beneficial to a foreign country and its people as opposed to the American people. Okay, I don't think it's that difficult to understand this, and I'm pretty sure all of the people on that panel do know this, they do understand it, but they engage in these fake conversations and debates anyway as if they don't understand it, as if everyone who's raising these concerns is just a full-blown anti-Semite who hates Jews. Has nothing to do with Jews, it has something to do with a foreign country. That foreign country, not our country. Not our country. I don't care if it's a country full of Muslims. I don't care if it's a country full of Jews. I don't care if it's a country full of atheists. I don't care. It's a foreign country. That's it. So let's keep going. So the guy in the cowboy hat, which I'm sure you didn't miss, because how could you, is a Democratic strategist. His name is Chuck Rocha. Now he's the one who admitted that he spent money to get Thomas Massie out of office. How do you Republicans feel about that, huh? Little Democrat with a cowboy hat spent money to oust your guy, Thomas Massie. So it gets crazier because someone else on the panel is about to admit that they actually have they've been employed by AIPAC before. Let's take a look at that.
After October 7th and after the rhetoric that many Jewish groups were alarmed by, you did see increased spending by political action committees over the issue of Israel. That is just a demonstrable fact of spending. How do you talk about that spending without doing what Galindo or Massie or some of these other folks are talking about?
I think it's really important to ground this conversation when you're comparing a U.S. congressman to a sex therapist who's not a real candidate. She's a crazy person.
There, who is by profession a sex therapist.
As a Democrat consultant, she's a crazy person. I'm running ads right now against her for Sheriff Johnny Garcia, a real hero in San Antonio, because that woman is crazy. And when we're talking about her compared to a U.S. congressman, I just don't think it's apples to apples. But I give you credit, I give everybody credit that there's a lot of money is pro-Israel, anti-Israel in all of these primaries, more so than I've ever seen before, no matter which side of this thing you're on.
She's not the only person in our party who's flirting with anti-Semitism.
Audie, to answer your question honestly, because you're not gonna get an honest answer from anyone on that panel, and you know this. She asks, okay, well, how do you talk about the Israel lobby and its influence on our elections without being accused of being an anti-Semite? And the answer is it's impossible because they don't want you to talk about that. It's impossible. You could be the most meek, mealy-mouthed commentator on the planet that's just trying to, cite what kind of spending took place in a particular congressional race. If you mention the Israel lobby, they're gonna call you an anti-Semite, no matter what. You could literally be a Jewish individual wearing a giant Star of David, but if you are critical of the Israel lobby and its undue influence over our politicians, you will be called an anti-Semite. And you know that, Audie, you know that. And these Democrats, man, you guys are super embarrassing, just running around calling anyone who hurts Israel's feelings an anti-Semite. Oh, and that dude in the cowboy hat, right? The one who spent money on ousting Thomas Massie, he's a Democratic consultant. Looks like he's been a Democratic consultant for a long time. And you guys know what I think about Democratic consultants. Total losers, total failures. They somehow manage to fail upward. They get paid handsomely through your campaign donations, small dollar donations to these politicians, to give these either incumbent politicians or candidates terrible advice. Think about the fact that Kamala Harris raised $1.5 billion in the last presidential race. She outraised Donald Trump. And she ended her campaign in debt. How much did she spend on these consultants? Anyway, the first guy who spoke, by the way, in that last clip is a CNN senior reporter by the name of Edward Isaac DeVere. Might be familiar with him. He used to write, I believe, over at The Atlantic. And he's the guy who worked with AIPAC, and the guy who's worked with AIPAC before is actually a Republican strategist by the name of Brad Todd. But you won't just hear those kinds of statements on cable television. You'll definitely hear them all over the place. You'll hear them from one of the biggest names in the Democratic Party, in fact. Here's Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and what he had to say when he was asked about AIPAC support and whether or not it's an anchor around the necks of Democratic primary candidates. Take a look.
It's never been an issue in any of my races at the state level, but I do think it has cynically been used by some. I'm going to make this a broad statement, not about the race here in Philly, but I think it's been used cynically by some to try and silence certain voices, to try and say that certain people participating in politics shouldn't count or should be viewed in a toxic way. Now, do I agree with every political decision they've made, every endorsement they made? Of course not.
Have they hurt themselves, do you think, AIPAC? There's a blurring between being against AIPAC and being against Jewish folks giving money, you're saying?
I think it does get blurred because now what you are seeing is not, quote unquote, AIPAC money or however it was termed, but you're getting the Jews who give to that candidate who also support AIPAC. I think it's very dangerous in our system. If you are trying to silence certain voices based on their race, based on their faith, based on their particular ideology.
I don't care. I don't care that they're Jews. I don't care. Sorry, you're not special because you're Jewish. I don't care if you're Jewish, I don't care if you're Christian. If you are lobbying our government to carry out what's in the best interests of a foreign government to the detriment of the American people, you are a problem. The lobby is a problem. Now, we don't live in a system where all money is out of politics. Unfortunately, we live in a system where our Supreme Court has decided that unlimited money pumped into races, pumped into a candidate's candidacy is the equivalent of speech. We live in that system now. Now, I would love to have a constitutional amendment that does away with all money in politics. I wish our elections were publicly funded, and I'm willing to fight for that. So this isn't just, AIPAC bad and only AIPAC bad. We've been railing against money in politics on this show for many, many years. But like I explained earlier, when it comes to lobbying on behalf of a foreign country, and when that lobbying has such an impact that our foreign policy benefits that foreign country to the detriment of our country, it is a problem. And Josh Shapiro knows that. He knows that. No one's having a discussion here about like, oh no, we need to pass laws and regulations preventing Jewish people from campaign donations. No one's having a conversation about that. We are having a conversation about the undue influence of Israel on our politics, on our government. And Josh Shapiro has decided to label anyone who has a problem with that an anti-Semite. Noted, definitely noted. Okay. So meanwhile, AIPAC itself is continuing to infiltrate, and I mean that word, infiltrate our political landscape by any trickery necessary. Now they know that they're unpopular with the American people. Americans have caught on to the fact that they're incredibly influential and influential in ways that don't really benefit us. And so Luke Goldstein, a reporter over at The Lever, wrote yesterday that new AIPAC-aligned spending vehicle in disguise just dropped. Better Blue Fund is a new JFC bankrolled by Democratic Majority for Israel / AIPAC donors supporting Democratic candidates, many of whom are in competitive primaries where direct AIPAC support has become radioactive. Blue Fund acts as a workaround. That includes Ben McAdams in Utah's first. Previously, McAdams was DMFI endorsed, but not this cycle. Hence, his inclusion in the JFC makes it all the more significant. So in other words, AIPAC is trying to find workarounds. They're like relabeling things in order to pump money into campaigns without Democratic voters noticing. But luckily, we do have some reporters who are following this stuff, reporting on this stuff, and informing us about what's going on here. But make no mistake about it, the Democratic voters who believe that the Israel lobby is radioactive, or a candidate taking money from the Israel lobby is radioactive, are red-blooded Americans who want to vote for candidates who are going to look out for them. Not for Israel, but for them. And there's nothing wrong with that. That doesn't make you an anti-Semite. We live in this country. We pay taxes in this country. We vote and elect representatives to represent us in this country. I could give a damn about what happens to Israel. Israel is not my country, wasn't born there, couldn't care less about Israel. So yeah, it is a big problem when a lobby that cares more about a foreign country influences our government to the detriment of the American people. I'm gonna keep repeating that over and over again. And no, invoking the Holocaust and anti-Semitism and whatever BS trickery they engage in order to justify this corruption, not gonna work. It's not gonna work. That simple. We gotta take a break. We'll be right back with more. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. Let's go to, I want to read something from our Twitch community. All right, let's go to our Twitch subs. We've got Green New Dealer Dragon, US blood and treasure is a sacrifice. Is a sacrifice Nazi Israel is willing to make. I mean, Israel doesn't care about us. Like, Israel sees us as a group of people to be exploited in order to bankroll their empire building project in the Middle East. Why would they care about us? I mean, obviously they don't care about us. They're perfectly happy to send US troops on the ground in Iran in an incredibly dangerous operation to do what? To topple a regime that would be incredibly difficult to topple. And again, it would be a death wish for our soldiers. They don't care. Who cares? Anyway, Semper Fire Dog says Israel has the Epstein files, probably worse. Probably. And I don't know how to make it so our government doesn't attract disgusting people as politicians, but I think that's the real issue here. Like, why are our politicians so easy to blackmail? I don't know. We've got Ford Country 420 who says right-wingers love the Opus Dei Catholics who control the Supreme Court. Not so much the Pope, who actually quotes the teachings of his boss, Jesus Christ. That is a great point. I totally agree with you on that. Let's get back to the show. All in on a story that I had referenced on the show yesterday. I was very curious about it. It had to do with an Israeli national who got caught operating some biolabs, illegal biolabs. And the big update to the story was that some charges were dropped, and it sent me back to the Tom Alexandrovich story, right? The Israeli government official who was in Vegas for a cybersecurity conference called Black Hat, and he was caught trying to have sex with a 15-year-old in an FBI sting operation, and our government just sent him back to Israel. Yeah, well, let's get to the details of this story. It's not quite as bad as the Alexandrovich story, but I am curious about why federal charges were dropped against a guy who appeared to be operating illegal biological labs. So let's get to the details. Federal prosecutors have decided to drop charges, including illegal firearms charges against an Israeli national at the center of multiple illegal biological labs here in the United States. Now, luckily, the authorities discovered these biological labs and prevented something absolutely devastating from happening here in the United States. However, these labs were discovered in Nevada and in California, And I want to give you the details of what we know about this story so far. So the Israeli national goes by Ori Solomon, and he was arrested back in January of this year in response to allegations that he had an illegal biolab operated in a residential property that he managed in Las Vegas, Nevada. And while he's still facing felony charges in Clark County for the illegal disposal of hazardous waste, his previous federal gun charges were weirdly dropped. In fact, they were filed against him following a raid of the property in question. Now those illegal gun charges, which were the federal charges, have been dropped. So this raid, by the way, the one in Nevada, resulted in the discovery of several illegal firearms belonging to Solomon, as well as French and Israeli passports. There were also, of course, pathogens and all sorts of really dangerous viruses found at this lab as well. But Solomon is currently in the United States on a non-immigrant visa, which of course prevents him from being able to legally own firearms within our borders. He had the firearms, they found multiple firearms, and that's why he was originally charged with federal illegal gun possession charges, but then it got dropped. So despite his immigration status, Solomon manages over 30 short-term rentals in Las Vegas, in the Las Vegas area. So he's here on a non-immigrant visa, and he's managing over 30 short-term rentals in the Las Vegas area. Fascinating. Okay. The Nevada property in question is owned by a Chinese national who lives under the alias David He. David was also arrested and named in an ongoing investigation into an illegal biolab that was being operated out of a warehouse in Reedley, California. Insane. Authorities discovered the illegal manufacturing of HIV, COVID, and pregnancy tests in the Reedley lab. Okay, so it's not clear at the moment if Solomon is also involved in the California operation. We don't know for sure. But law enforcement was able to confirm that the materials discovered in the home Solomon managed in Las Vegas are similar to those found in the warehouse in California. What is going on here? So let's get back to the gun charges. Why were they dropped? We don't really have much clarity on that, do we? It's weird because I feel like there have been some pretty high-profile cases lately, including that case of the Israeli government official, Tom Alexandrovich, who was caught in an FBI sting operation in Las Vegas, by the way, attempting to have sex with a 15-year-old girl. They allowed him to fly back to Israel, and if you've been following the court proceedings, they keep canceling his court appearances over and over again. What is that about? But getting back to these gun charges involving Solomon, the case against Solomon encountered a major curveball this month when the federal gun charges were suddenly out of nowhere and inexplicably dropped without prejudice. So according to the court filing, the decision to dismiss the charges came after a careful review of the evidence and additional information provided by the defendant. That's all we know. So was he in possession of illegal firearms or not? And why is this not a bigger story? When you have especially when it comes to the Trump administration, right? Like they never miss an opportunity to fearmonger about migrants. They've got, Shirley doing these videos on Somalis. Ooh, the Somalis. We should be so afraid of the Somalis, right? You got a dude like managing properties that have illegal biolabs. He's in possession of all these firearms illegally. Does Trump have anything to say about that? Anything at all? No? Okay. The state charges in Nevada regarding the improper disposal of hazardous materials still stand. So he will be prosecuted for that as of now. We don't know that those could be dropped when we're not looking. But those charges still stand. Solomon, who's been out on bond since February, is due back in court on June 4th as the felony state charges for the improper disposal of hazardous materials still stand. The judge also ruled that he would have to surrender his passport and stay in the country until the case against him is adjudicated. And that's how this story differs from what happened with Tom Alexandrovich. You know, that Israeli was able to fly back to Israel. He's in the comfort of a country that will protect him. They would never extradite him, even though our FBI caught him in a sting operation attempting to have sex with a 15-year-old. It was a decoy, but nonetheless, 15-year-old. So our government, our judicial system, totally okay with letting that guy off, even though he was attempting to victimize a 15-year-old American girl. Okay. Our government hates us. If that's not clear to you yet, it should be clear to you. And I'm not just talking about the federal government. Clearly, this is an issue that just can be seen in state representation, federal representation, municipal representation. It is insane. Now, Solomon would need the court's permission if he wanted to return to Israel or leave the confines of the continental United States. Something tells me that if he pushes hard enough, he'll probably get what he wants. Alexandrovich certainly did. Although Solomon is not an Israeli government official, so maybe he wouldn't, I don't know. But there is no direct evidence of special treatment. At the same time, honestly, it's hard to imagine an immigrant from, say, I don't know, Venezuela would have his federal charges of illegal gun possession dropped. So that double standard still exists, it's pretty clear. And Americans who actually follow stories like this want some answers. Because I'm not satisfied with the federal government's rationale for dropping the federal charges. Why? Like, you need more of an explanation than what we've seen here so far. So just going back to a story I covered earlier today involving a CNN panel discussion about AIPAC or the Israel lobby and people who speak out against the Israel lobby, they just hate Jewish people. They're just anti-Semites. No, they speak out against it because more and more Americans are waking up to the fact that we don't just live in a two-tier justice system as it pertains to Israeli nationals and everyone else. We live in a country that features a government that is more interested in representing a foreign country as opposed to our country. That's a big problem. And unless this changes and improves for Americans, I don't know where this ends, honestly. Because more and more people are getting furious with this. I'm getting furious with this. And so if you have a government that doesn't feel accountable to you, I don't know, some people might wanna force them to be accountable to us. So if you don't want people rising up, if you don't want instability in the country, you don't want mass protests, you don't want rage and anger, you don't want people who live here, who are citizens of this country, to lose any and all faith in our institutions, how about you actually represent the American people? And that goes for the justice system, that goes for Congress, certainly goes for the White House, but don't hold your breath when it comes to the Trump administration. This is pathetic. 2 biolabs with incredibly dangerous pathogens. What are we doing? Anyway, let's take our final break. When we come back, I don't know, we've got a ton of stories I haven't gotten to. I don't know what I'm gonna cover for sure. No, I'm gonna talk about crypto and Jasmine Crockett. We have to talk about that. We'll be right back. All right, let's go to Burrito Bandito in our members section. Speaking of Wasserman, will Waz be on Friday? I could use a good laugh. I don't know why Wasserman reminded you of Wosny Lombre, but I don't think so. I'm not entirely sure. I love Waz. Anytime he's on the show is a good time. Green New Dealer Dragon, I've read your comment already. Let's see. Box writes in and says, we could open the Strait of Hormuz, but he has to go to Congress and declare war. No, Box, you're not getting it. Our military would be crushed, and it's because of a number of different reasons. Well, first of all, our stockpiles of interceptors and the necessary weapons, obviously very much depleted. And then you compare that to Iran's, weapons stockpiles, which are pretty impressive right now compared to the United States. It's a mismatch and it puts us at a disadvantage. On top of that, you would literally need to do a surge of troops in the region to the tune of like hundreds of thousands of troops. Like, we don't have the manpower. And not only that, okay, we might be able to temporarily open the Strait of Hormuz, but would we be able to maintain that situation, which is what Joe Kent was referring to. Anyway, let's get back to the show. Gunner Party 1234 or 1323, apologies, writes in and says, "Thank you for your service, Joe Kent." Nice polite comment, I like that. Just wanted to give you some props for it. All right, let's get to one final story before we head on over to our members only bonus episode. I wanted to talk a little bit about something I referenced earlier on the show, actually yesterday. It was something that I came across on social media involving Jasmine Crockett. And I want to kind of like flesh out that story a little more. Let's get into it.
I'm Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. We need a new generation of fighters who are ready to throw down for what's right. My friend Christian Menifee is that fighter. Christian Menifee took on MAGA in Texas and won. In Congress, I see him doing the work firsthand every single day. Y'all, on May 26th, I need you to vote for Congressman Christian Menifee.
Protect Progress is responsible for the content of this ad.
Well, Jasmine Crockett played a role in ousting a wonderful politician, if you ask me, Congressman Al Green. Yes, he was older, but he was a fighter, to say the least, and a critic of Israel. Unfortunately, the person who beat him, the person you heard Jasmine Crockett endorsing in that last clip, is someone who is bought by corporate interests and is a lot more supportive toward Israel, which is why you had, you have a black incumbent, Al Green, being challenged by a younger Democratic challenger. It's just that this younger Democratic challenger has differences of opinion when it comes to a foreign country. So the campaign ad that you just watched was brought to our attention by independent journalist Andrew Perez, who wrote this on X. A new wrinkle to crypto's election buying. Jasmine Crockett tapped an ad for a crypto super PAC to help the industry take out her Democratic colleague, Al Green. Quote, "I can't think of another instance of a sitting lawmaker appearing in an industry-funded super PAC ad," Brendan Fisher says. So that was actually a $500,000 advertisement paid for by a super PAC known as Protect Progress. Now, when it comes to super PACs that have those really good sounding names, usually you should expect the opposite of what their name would describe, right? So Protect Progress is affiliated with Fair Shake, a deep-pocketed super PAC that reported $193 million in cash on hand at the beginning of the year. Protect Progress boosts left-leaning candidates who support cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, while its Republican counterpart, Defend American Jobs, spends on behalf of Republican candidates. So look, when it comes to corporations, industry, whatever, you'll notice that they bribe politicians on both sides of the political aisle. And that's exactly what I just outlined for you in reading that graphic. So Greens, like in the Texas race between Christian Menifee and Al Green. Green's donations stem from a mix of small individual donors giving less than $200 and larger four-figure sums. Big name donors include former Houston Metro Chair Corinne Patman, Hillco lobbying firm co-founder Bill Miller, and healthcare executive Tahir Javid. And he's also been boosted by donations from PACs for United Airlines and beer wholesaler, credit union, and realtor groups, along with various unions. But all of that, according to the Texas Tribune, has been dwarfed by the support Menefee has gotten from the crypto super PAC, Protect Progress. The group dropped $1.5 million on ads boosting him ahead of the March primary election, and it has spent more than double that amount leading up to the runoff, according to Federal Election Commission filings that show Protect Progress has poured in more than $4 million on Menefee's behalf. So the question is why? Right? Like why? Why did Jasmine Crockett go in that direction? Why did she appear in that ad against Al Green? And is she taking crypto money? What's going on here, right? Well, Crockett and Menefee are willing to give all sorts of cookies to the crypto industry, which you shouldn't be shocked by. Crockett is one of the Democrats' fiercest warriors on behalf of the crypto lobby. And this goes all the way back to her first congressional run when crypto super PAC spent over, I didn't know this, $2 million to get her elected. $2 million to get her elected. Yeah. So Crockett voted last year for the crypto industry's priority legislation, the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for US Stablecoins, or known as Genius Act, the first major effort to regulate cryptocurrency nationwide. Regulate is an interesting word to use in this context, but I digress. It gave the industry long-sought legitimacy and helped fulfill Trump's campaign promise to make the US the crypto capital of the planet. Trump himself has grifted off this crypto scheme in the crypto industry, providing avenues in which foreign actors can bribe the president by buying his stable coins. But anyway, or buying his coins, his crypto. So according to Texas Monthly, Crockett was among 102 Democrats who voted with most Republicans to approve that bill. 110 Democrats voted against it. In addition to tech titan and conservative provocateur Mark Andreessen, Ben Horowitz and Gemini co-founders, the Winklevoss twins, contributed to her campaign, helped her get elected. So she also received contributions in 2024 from Anatoly Yakovenko, the CEO of the blockchain platform Solana, Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase, and Hayden Adams, the CEO of the cryptocurrency exchange Uniswap. Each of these donors or their companies would later contribute to Trump's inaugural fund, according to records collected by Open Secret. So I'm gonna pause right here and just say, Jasmine Crockett is a relatively new member of Congress. And what really put her on the map in terms of name recognition was the argument that she had on the House floor with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So they're, trading barbs, taking jabs at each other and one another's appearance. And what really stood out to me about that moment, even though at that moment I was like, okay, all right, she's a fighter, I like that, I like fighters, was that everything I saw from her in that moment moving forward was identitarianism, theater, a lot of kabuki theater. Basically the illusion of a strong Democratic fighter, but if you pay attention to the substance of what she's fighting for, ain't much substance there. Just keep it real. Okay, you made fun of Marjorie Taylor Greene's body. I guess we're celebrating that now, but what are you going to do for your constituents? How are you gonna represent Democratic voters? What are you fighting for? Who are you? We later learned that Jasmine Crockett took the Israel propaganda trips that so many members of Congress, both on the left and right, go to. She defended her, support for Israel. She defended the fact that she went on that trip in the first place, and in fact got super salty toward Michael Tracy when he asked questions about her relationship to the Israel lobby and their support for her. Oh, there we go. We've got a photo of her. There she is in Israel. The yellow circle is where you'll find her. So this is where she traveled to Israel for one of these trips, okay? Other members of Congress are seen there as well. And so that's a little bit of a problem. Now, going back to Menefee for a moment, he wrote on his campaign site that blockchain technology, the decentralized system used to record and verify crypto transactions, offers the potential to increase trust, transparency, and efficiency with rules to protect consumers. Does it though? I mean, what does this do in regard to, corruption, basically illegal dealings, right? Being paid for or funded through cryptocurrency. Like there's a real problem with that. But nonetheless, the Texas Tribune also added that the industry group stands with crypto. The industry group Stand With Crypto gave an A rating to Menefee and an F to Al Green, who Menefee just recently beat in the primary race. And that's because Al Green actually voted against several crypto bills, including the Genius Act, because he was more interested in what was right for his constituents as opposed to an industry that heavily funded his campaign. But you'd be surprised to learn that it's not just crypto. Let's go to this AIPAC post because they love to rub it in our faces and then cry like they're victims when we all acknowledge that the Israel lobby has a nefarious purpose here in the US. Congratulations, Representative Christian Menefee, on your victory tonight over one of the most outspoken anti-Israel voices in Congress. So just take that in, Democratic voters, take it in. The majority of Democratic voters, according to polling, would like to stop aiding and abetting Israel's war crimes. They would like to stop sending our resources to Israel. Nonetheless, you have enough money pumped into the campaign of, a Democratic challenger to an incumbent, and you just play enough ads that honestly trick people into thinking the challenger is better, and people will vote for them, and that's where we are today. So let's pivot to this Missouri race and Wesley Bell, because it doesn't end there for Crockett. In addition to all of what's going down in Texas, Crockett faced backlash for backing an AIPAC-funded candidate in Missouri. So that candidate is Representative Wesley Bell, who is going up against an actual progressive, Cori Bush. Cori Bush is running again. This is going to be a rematch for a House seat. So when Bell took office in January of 2025, he did so on the heels of one of the most expensive congressional primary campaigns in American history, backed heavily by pro-Israel organizations, including the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, AIPAC, and its super PAC, United Democracy Project. Bell defeated Bush by roughly 5.5 percentage points. Bush has framed her campaign as an act of resistance against massive outside spending and special interests, stating that voters want to be the ones to pick their representatives. Some believe the message directly clashes with Crockett's endorsement of Bell. Good, it should. Crockett's not your friend, okay? Crockett is more of the same corrupt Democrat slop that I think Democratic voters have had enough of. I could be wrong, but just based on the polling and what Democrats keep saying they want, what the voters keep saying they want, Crockett ain't it. But she's ready and willing to play ball with some of the most corrupt, lobbies and influential lobbies in this country. She knows how to get her bread buttered, and that's how she made her way to Congress. And she's going to go ahead and, serve those corporate interests like a good corporate operative within Congress. Crockett was quick to respond to this, by the way, claiming that she didn't endorse Wesley Bell, she wrote this on Threads. Y'all are hilarious. It's 9 a.m. where I am, and I'm awakened to the same overly overly pressed paid losers talking crap. Now that I've gotten your attention, the Fire PAC lists all of our formally endorsed candidates. When a member of Congress invites you to their district on behalf of an organization to speak, okay, in order to speak, we aren't crappy toward the member as some of you seemingly want a person to be. I've seen you be plenty crappy to people. Like it seems to be your brand. So why are you pretending like it's not your brand? It's not something you do. Okay. Anyway, let's keep going. When I'm speaking of a member, when I'm asked to, I won't tear them down. I will speak of what it is that I've seen of them. And I spoke to what I've seen of the congressman when in St. Louis, as he asked me to speak at his private event. Now, please rush out and ask both candidates which one solicited an endorsement from me. P.S. Texas and Cali are the only states with formal endorsements so far, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, she's corrupt. She is not your friend. She's more of what we don't want in the Democratic Party. And unless we wake up to this reality and we stop falling prey to obvious identitarianism meant to distract us with BS, we're gonna keep having a pathetic Democratic Party in Congress that does nothing for us. So tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell Randy Gonzalez, okay? Because Crockett, not your friend, more of the same. We need to make changes. Unless we make those changes, we're gonna keep being disappointed in what Congress does for us. All right. Bonus episode for our members is next. If you're not a member, tyt.com/join to become one, and we'll see you there.